Presiding Officer, the Home Office and the police told Rosanna Cunningham not to include 2 footpaths near the Balmoral estate in a core path network because it would increase the security risk to the Queen. Rosanna Cunningham's astonishing reply was, "I am not persuaded that this amounts to sufficient reason for excluding these 2 paths from the core paths plan." Does the First Minister agree? Is the safety of the Queen and her family a sufficient reason to keep 2 paths off a map?
First Minister.
Well, let me just say that even by Ian Gray's standards, that's an absurd way to introduce this subject, almost as embarrassing as his interview on Radio Scotland this morning, which I had the misfortune to hear, which no doubt will come to later, because I want the whole chamber to appreciate the full bouquet of Ian Gray's patent absurdity on this issue. I've examined the issue because of its seriousness. Every correct procedure was followed throughout. The Cairngorms National Park wanted to have these paths designated. There was an objection by the factor of the Balmoral estate. It went to the official reporter in due process. The official reporter said they should be designated subject to security concerns. Rosanna Cunningham wrote to the Minister of the Home Office on the 10th of December asking for the security information, saying before reaching a decision she should have that information. She got it back last week on Thursday, the 14th of January, the same day. The same day she instructed her officials to say to the Cairngorm National Parks that under the circumstances the paths could not be designated, and they were informed of that last Monday. Everything in this government, according to this issue, has been carried out by due process. Now that eventually Ian Gray has the facts, would he like to retreat from the absolute, total, ridiculous absurdity of his position?
Order. Ian Gray.
The true facts, Presiding Officer, are that this advice...
Order.
That this advice was known in 2007, it was known in 2008, it was known in 2009, and in the letter, which finally resulted in the right thing being done, the advice was, and the letter makes this clear, reiterated. The truth is, Rosanna Cunningham rejected the advice of the police and the Home Office. She had to be forced to do the right thing. She had to be forced to do the right thing by a Home Office threat.
Order.
She had to be forced to do the right thing by a Home Office threat to overrule her, because what she was proposing to do was such a security risk, I quote, such a security risk to the Queen and her immediate family. In these days, when everyone knows that terrorism is a real threat, will the First Minister admit that Rosanna Cunningham is wrong to try and ignore security advice?
First Minister.
Well, I think when Ian Gray is in a giant hole, he should stop digging, and he's digging himself even further in, so the whole chamber can appreciate. Can I quote from Rosanna Cunningham's letter to the Home Office? Before reaching a decision on the Cairngorm National Park Core Pass Plan, following a public local inquiry, I am writing to establish whether there is any additional information about security considerations affecting the Balmoral estate which you would wish me to take into account. Before reaching a decision, she asked for the security information. She got the security information, she made a decision that was communicated to the Cairngorm National Park. Now, there is one aspect of Ian Gray's question which I hope everyone agrees with, and that is the question that security matters concerning the royal family are serious matters. And therefore I hope he will agree with me that if it were to be found that someone had maliciously leaked this information to certain newspapers, then that would be a very serious matter indeed. And therefore today we have asked the Home Office to institute a leak inquiry to see if we can establish where this information came from. And I know that Ian Gray, given the seriousness he takes on this issue, will join with me in welcoming that step taken by the Scottish Government.
Ian Gray.
There was a request from Rosanna Cunningham for additional information in order to change her mind. The only additional information that was provided, was that if she proceeded in the way in which she was proposing, then that would have to be overruled by the Home Office for security considerations. It is good that the right decision has finally been reached. Will the First Minister simply not admit that it should not have required that threat in order to reach that correct decision?
First Minister.
I've read out already the verbatim from Rosanna Cunningham's letter, and I think the Chamber and the record will validate that position. But I did promise the Chamber that they would get to appreciate the full bouquet of the absurdity of Ian Gray's position. This is a transcript from Radio Scotland this morning. Ian Gray says, "I think the truth is she decided these two paths should not be included when the Scottish Government realised that a story was going to run in a newspaper today. That's not the proper reason for taking what is, in the end, a proper decision." Even Isabel Clarke of the BBC was moved to say, "Well, apparently the Parks Authority were advised of this at the beginning of the week, not just this morning or late last night." Rosanna Cunningham took the decision on the day she received the letter on security information from the Home Office. Now that Ian Gray realises and doesn't contest that, would he like to revise his position from this morning?
Ian Gray.
My position is straightforward. The security advice. I would advise the First Minister to take security issues seriously. This security advice was known in 2007. It was known in 2008. It was known in 2009. It was resisted until the threat was made that Rosanna Cunningham's decision would be overruled. The First Minister should be big enough to admit an error of judgment was made, and that threat should never have been required.
First Minister.
I agree with Ian Gray on one matter, and that was actually in the letter from the Home Office Minister David Hanson, when he said, quote, "The police would prefer to attract as little attention as possible to this path, given its location." I'm not sure that Ian Gray has been following that advice over the last 24 hours, but I'm sure he'll join with me in welcoming the leak inquiry so we can pinpoint which forces in society wanted to make a political issue of royal security. Now, as Ian Gray was stumbling through his last question, I heard the cry go up, "Bring back Jack." The only trouble for Ian Gray, I looked round and Jack was nodding.